Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. I have a couple creators joining me today to talk about a series. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, we've been talking about doing this for years, and I'm glad we're finally getting ready to do this. I have Freddie Williams and JT Krul on the show, and we're going to talk some Captain Atom today. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
So this was way back in the New 52. It was a different take on Captain Atom. I just reread it this last weekend in anticipation of talking to you gentlemen, and oh my god, I want more. I really do. This was such a different take on the character of Captain Atom. So let's start off by, if you guys can recall, I mean, I know it's been 10 years now, how you got involved with the project. We'll start with you, JT. Did DC reach out? Did you pitch it? How did it come about?
Yeah, I mean, going behind the curtains a little bit, basically it was, hey, we're doing the New 52 and you're not going to be doing Teen Titans anymore. Would you want to do Captain Atom? And so they talked to me about a couple of things, but that was the one that they mentioned that they were looking for a creative team for, and they asked me if I'd be interested in exploring that, and I jumped at the chance. I think he's a cool character in his current iteration of the time. You know, he's got a lot going on. And I also thought that the marching orders were they want to kind of lean into the Dr. Manhattan aspect, and that was really the big note that they gave me, and that was kind of it, you know. And so, yeah, so that was kind of the thing. I don't know how they approached you, Freddie. I can't remember how they approached you about it.
Yeah, it's directly connected with my exit from JSA All Stars. JSA All Stars was the first team book that I had ever drawn, and Mike Carlin, who was my editor for JSA All Stars, called me and he said two times in the same. I love Mike, by the way, so this is him. He was just leveling with me, but he basically said, "We're thinking about putting you on another book because JSA All Stars hasn't exactly been lighting up the sales charts." I think that's what he said, but he said it twice in the same conversation, so I knew he was. It was like a soft firing, is how I took it at first, but then he said so. I think he said either, Mike Martz will get a hold of you, or maybe, I can't remember if Mike Carlin was the editor at the beginning of that, and then eventually it was Rachel.
No, I think
Anyway,
that was Rachel. Yeah,
was it? Okay.
yeah, I think so.
So it was like a handoff. He was saying goodbye to JSA and then, over to Captain Atom. But I think whenever I was talking to Rachel first before JT and I started collaborating, which by the way, is one of the most fulfilling collaborations I've ever had. So thank you for that,
No,
JT.
you stole my line. You stole my line, Freddie.
But Rachel, basically, yeah, she said, we're wanting to do the Dr. Manhattan thing, like go all the way with it. She said something like that. And so what that meant to me was like, as powerful as our imagination will allow us to go without a whole lot of like guest starring, like the A-lister guys into our story, because New 52 was wanting to avoid that, and then we somehow wrangled the Flash in there for one issue. So I feel like that was really cool, the scene that JT wrote. So
That's
anyway,
still
yeah,
one of my favorite. That's still one of my favorite images, even though Captain Atom is not in that page.
yeah.
It's just the Flash, but Flash picking the bullets out of the air, like that's
Oh, yeah.
still like one of my favorite images from that
Yeah,
series.
I think you wrote something like picking them out of the air like flowers or something,
Yeah,
like just
yeah.
the most casual sort of body language. So, because to him it's like a lazy day. He could just walk around and
Exactly.
smell the roses or pick the bullets, whatever.
Well, I think part of what makes that scene work is it's also the scripting in that panel, because yeah, he's just like Captain Atom, like he's so casually picking the bullets out of the air, but also like, hey, what are you doing here? Like not like all amped up with this dialogue. Like you can tell it's just completely effortless that he's grabbing these bullets that are right as they're being fired out of these automatic weapons. It just works. It's just awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. I think I've seen that image. Was that scene homaged in one of the Flash TV shows or something? I thought I saw like a screenshot,
Maybe they
of,
did,
or maybe it was just AI art and someone tricked me.
and you did. Maybe they use it in the show, but you probably didn't get a paycheck for it.
Yeah,
No, no,
or
probably
even,
not.
even a credit. Well, like I said, this is one of my favorite iterations of Captain Atom. He's such an interesting character because really, if you talk about leaning into the Dr. Manhattan aspect, it's bringing it full circle, right? Like Dr. Manhattan is actually based on the Golden Age Captain Atom, way back from Charlton, So really, it's Captain Atom imitating the imitation of Captain Atom, which
Yeah.
I find to just be fascinating. But again, this is a character I feel like a lot of times DC hasn't known what to do with them. So when you got that note, JT, and they said, okay, we want to lean into the Dr. Manhattan aspect, like what in terms of characterization did that bring to mind as you started to develop him? And then we're going to go to you, Freddie, after that, and you can kind of talk about how it kind of informed your visuals, because this is a little bit of a different look for him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the way I approached it was the story was going to be about alienation and about a person getting these powers and trying to maintain his humanity. So if we do think about the Dr. Manhattan version, by the time Watchmen starts, Dr. Manhattan is way gone. Like he's already removed. He's still got his relationship, but he's still just kind of hanging on by a tether to humanity. He's not sure he really wants to be a part of it. And so what we did, or what I wanted to do, or what drew me to it was taking that and kind of going back and filling out that middle ground. So you'd see like this is after he gets his powers, he's still just a regular person. He's still the pilot, and he's trying to understand what's happening to him, but he's still pretty much a man. And so in a way, the arc we did was about him losing his humanity in a way and pulling away. And so by that one of the last images we have is him deciding he's going to, leave the planet. So it's almost like if you imagine what Dr. Manhattan's first trip to the moon would have been like, because that, in the Watchmen when he's sitting there with the photograph, I envision that this is where he goes all the time because it's a place where he feels silence and some sense of comfort and a sense of just normalcy or whatever, because he doesn't belong anywhere on Earth. And so, where he starts out, he's like at the Continuum, and he's talking to, Dr. McGowan, and he's talking to Renita, and he's got relationships, and he's remembering his past, all that sort of stuff, and trying to just and even the way he talks, he's talking like a regular person in a lot of ways. And then it's about kind of him losing that as he kind of goes through this process. So that was really interesting for me, and knowing that we were going to lean into the science fiction angle of it, have action, but it's not a superhero. It's really not a superhero book, and that was kind of by design, and that's another thing that really drew me to it.
What about visually, Freddie?
Oh yeah, let me just add something to what JT had said. Was that the way that there's something that I've heard referred to as, in quotes, the Superman problem. I know we're not talking about Superman, but it's when you have the responsibility of a creative team to somehow make it interesting when there's a character that is super powerful, that it's hard to tell stories without relying on like a kryptonite trope, which is still fine, or there's yet another character who can rival him or her on a powerful level, like a Doomsday or something, or a Bizarro or whatever.
Superman has to learn to punch a little harder this week.
Right, right. That's the answer to the Superman problem is he has to punch harder. But the real like sort of quandary for a creative team, but specifically the writer, is to find ways to make to make a struggle interesting without resorting to somebody always happening to accidentally be more powerful than him or her, or always having this like a kryptonite element that disempowers them over and over or something. And I think that throughout everything we did, JT was able to answer that problem perfectly. It was every time every element of the story really didn't fall into those normal expectations that you might have, or the easy to fall in pitfalls when you're just not sure what to do with a character, and you just say he's got to punch another guy, and that can still be fun. Don't get me wrong, but for a book that we were trying to do such an unusual twist on, or trying to twist it the way that maybe we hadn't seen it twisted a lot before, JT answered that in really interesting ways each time. And I think we had 13 issues of successful introspection and character growth without resorting to those normal sort of tropes or whatever. So that's one of the reasons that I really love Captain Atom, and even now whenever I'm signing them at conventions and stuff like the trades, I don't know, it just makes me feel I would love to to return to it. It was a very fulfilling creative exploration. Visually, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, visually, I was trying to do something just really different. It was an opportunity to try to. So I had evolved somewhat. Hopefully every visual artist will evolve over time. And when I first started at DC, really I think the thing that encouraged them to keep giving me work was that I was fast, and the over time I was adding more complexity to the art style, so I slowed down a little bit, but I was still, pretty fast, I guess, comparatively. But I didn't want to just be a deadline guy, so visually I wanted to try to explore something that I hadn't personally I hadn't seen in other comics. I'm sure I didn't create a completely original visual language. I was just kind of merging a couple. So we the idea was to make Captain Atom ultra saturated blue, which worked really well on the screen, but sometimes it would print out a little dull because that's just how printing presses work. You can't get a super vibrant blue in print. But then the background would be muted or pushed back, where I wanted him to feel ultra vibrant. Hopefully I said that right. Ultra vibrant, and then to feel like the background is this stark black and white sort of look, which I didn't invent that. That's, Frank Miller and David Lloyd and many other artists that would do that. And I'm, comparing myself to a couple people that is unflattering to them. But
no.
The point that I'm making, though, is this was, to me, completely just I was taking the idea of do something to be really original, really go for it. And that was the idea visually for this. And for a short time, I was going to try to color it myself as well, but then I did like a color test and it didn't quite feel right. And in the long run, I think that was a really good thing because I wouldn't have made some of the same color choices, and there's some really great ones in there. But just on a side note, like jumping to the end, that wasn't like going to be the only style I ever worked in. And so when I transitioned off of Captain Atom after we were like on finishing up issue 0, which would be like our 13th issue, I was talking to Joey Cavalieri, who was a different editor, that I ended up working with him on Green Arrow for like 5 issues. And I had said something to him like, we were talking on the phone, I was driving back home, and he goes, he says, that style you're doing on Captain Atom? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, that really scared the hell out of a lot of us at the DC editorial offices. And I said, well, it's not the only way. It's not like the only way I can draw now. I was just trying something new. And he goes, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, try something different. So he was like, don't do this weird, bizarre stuff on Green Arrow. Let's go back to a more traditional thing, which was fun. At least they let me for like a little over a year do this really hopefully striking visual difference that looked different across, compared to all the other books in the New 52 and stuff. So very generous for DC to let me experiment in that way.
I love that it's different. Sorry, JT. I love that it's different than your usual style, Freddie, because it's so unique, and the style that you chose and what you did is so perfectly suited for the story that you and JT told. So I think it's fantastic. I wouldn't, not that I don't love your, more traditional style, but I like that you did this style on this project.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I love it because I love the heavy lines. It really grounds the reality, but because Captain Atom's not drawn that way, he is always ethereally in the world. Like he's never fully connected. You almost feel like he's out of sync with it, right? He's misplaced. Like he's almost like his atoms are vibrating on a different level, and so he's just kind of. It's funny as you were talking, I was thinking like, in a way, like. On one hand, like obviously, we would have liked to have done more, and the fact that it only lasted 12 issues was disappointing. But I also think, and part of that I think is because with 52 new books, like it was so hard to kind of fight for that marketplace because everything else was new and everybody was overbuying everything, and so there was only so many dollars for people to spend. But I kind of think that if it hadn't been part of the New 52 and had been just like a new book they started, they may not have let us do what we did because I think they were so. Their focus was so saturated over all the 52 books that I think it gave us a little bit of the bandwidth. And Rachel and Ricky were great to work with, and they kind of let us, they were really supportive on what we wanted to do, and we barely got any pushback from the stuff. I mean, they provided good insight and good notes on stuff, but like, I mean, I was just for this call, I went back and I was looking at like some of like the notes and like the stuff I noted out after like some of our conversations, Freddie, like it's all there. Like it's all the stuff that we came up with. That's all in that book. And when Freddie says like, oh, JT did this and JT did that, it really wasn't like that because this was such a unique working experience. And so Freddie and I would basically have conversations on the phone, and we would talk through everything. And then I would basically just write a script summarizing what we talked about. So this was the most collaborative experience I've had working on a book, because I've not been able to do any other book like that. I wrote plot style for Freddie, which I normally don't do because I don't really like that, because I feel it's harder for me to write, and it's also, I feel like it gives the artist too much work to do because they have to figure out everything in their head. They have to figure out so much more. But this was easily one of the best working relationships and experiences I've had, and I'm not just saying that because he's looking at me in the face right now, but it really was.
I'm studying every nuance of your expressions to guide it, to gauge if you're telling the truth.
JT seems really maudlin right now. I don't know. Callback listeners, you won't get that. You won't get that callback. That was a pre-call callback.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really great about
Thank you, by the way.
When we're talking, going back to something you said earlier, JT, about this idea of its Doctor. By the time we meet Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, he is sort of detached already, and we're watching that here with Nathaniel Adam, Captain Adam. But it doesn't. We don't see it coming necessarily. We see it happen over time, but it's a little bit of up and down. And I'll specifically call out one of my favorite kind of plot lines that you don't. It's impactful at the time, but you don't realize that it's going to be a callback later on and how important it's going to be. And that's when Captain Adam he gains the ability to kind of see worldwide communication and email and phone calls and that sort of thing. And he gets this message from a young boy, 8 years old, who has brain cancer, and he's like, "Oh, just help me, Captain Adam. I know you're so powerful, what have you." And Captain Adam goes there, and he gets rid of the cancer in the boy's brain. And it happens to happen at a time where he's getting an experimental treatment, so everybody thinks it's experimental treatment and what have you. And it's so powerful. And as a reader, you're like, "Oh, what a hero, what a great guy." And Captain Adam, he feels connected, and he feels like he's doing good. He wants to be a hero. He has these incredible powers. But then later, it's the callback to it where he kind of has to go back and stop himself from doing it, because it is that stepping stone to the detachment where he's no longer he's gonna be so far removed from humanity that it doesn't matter. He could burn humanity with like ants with a magnifying glass. Yeah. It's moments like that I think really stand the test of time for this book. It's why it stands up, and you can go back and read it now, and it's still so great. But again, that's not something that you're going to be able to do on your own, JT. It's not something you'd be able to visually do, Freddie, without the the dialogue and the scripting that JT gave. So this is one of those books that shows the power of the collaboration and the power of the medium. And I think that's what you guys are talking about when you say it was such a rewarding experience. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, and editorially too. I mean, I was surprised that they allowed us to do that. It's not like, it's never like it's not like he read an incorrect way or handled incorrectly by a less skilled writer. That scenario could read in a very maudlin sort of way, like a morbid, negative, dark sort of way. So what I mean is, essentially, yeah, he saves a kid, but that kid grows up to become basically a fanatical cult leader type religious figure, basically. And through that leads the world to a very perilous... So it's not just with Captain Adam's consequences, it's like the world's consequences. And so the solution is essentially to have stopped himself from intervening or to undo his intervention. That, not to spoil it, if anyone wants to read it, hopefully you still read it, because I think it's handled very well by JT. But editorially, they didn't give us a note that said, "Wait a minute, you got to kill a kid," because some people could read it in that way, But no, it's more like, he has to go back and allow if you consider fate, or if you consider whatever the predestined, whatever you might think or believe that how the world works, he needs to be on the normal course and have stopped himself from thinking that he could minutely interfere in that way. That's how I took it, or
he's kind of
read the situation.
He's kind of got to let life happen.
Yeah, and also I think, look, Alan Moore is like, if not the godfather, one of the godfathers of deconstructing the superhero mythology. And when you think about characters like Captain Atom or like Superman or the Flash, you think about like, well, why can't they just do this, 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 and this? Why do all these bad things happen? And so really, in a way, this is deconstructing that notion of why doesn't a godlike superhero do everything? And like, well, this explains why. And so in a way, we were building in for future stories, we were building in kind of a psychological block, a limitation that he had in his own mind, thinking that, well, I can't change everything. And so that would give him a sense so that, again, that would also help ground him a little further for other stories so that he wouldn't become godlike right after he cured cancer from the kid. So and also, like you said, that being the catalyst which kind of led to everything, and also not only led to the kid becoming a cult leader, but also to the very far future energy form of Captain Atom or Chronomota becoming like this god, basically a god of energy who doesn't really care for the individual life that he affects.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's sort of an interesting way to do what Freddie was talking about earlier, to solve the Superman problem, right? Like, if Captain Atom is so powerful that he can adjust matter on an atomic level, what can't he do? And then at that point, if he becomes that powerful, then why do I care? Like, how do I relate to him as a writer, right? Yeah. Why do I care? This guy can do whatever he wants. That's boring.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So just mechanically, how JT was open enough to let me throw out ideas, but then all the responsibility was on him to make it work into a good story and stuff. Was we had if I'm misremembering this, correct me, JT, but we had a pitch meeting type thing, like a conference call with Rachel, our editor, on the phone. This is how it started. And she was just like, so, kind of like, what you guys got? What sort of ideas? And we all threw out just, this was before JT and I think, had spoken. We had met, we had been at a couple of group dinners and stuff at New York Comic Con and San Diego Con and stuff, but we hadn't really collaborated before this. And so we just started throwing out ideas, but it was clear to me that JT had no ego in this, where he was like, Freddie, if you've got ideas, please, throw them out. And I've worked with a lot of writers, and I never felt like any of them had big egos where they'd be beyond listening to a suggestion. But this was the first time that I felt like we were the air was so open that I felt like, okay, yeah, if you don't mind, I'll throw out a bunch of stuff. And then I also won't have an ego if you can't use these things, or if you think that they are off where you're, off the main line of the story too much, or just whatever. And so we had maybe an hour and a half conversation with Rachel. And then after that, JT and I started, it was we'd have
a 3-hour conversation. Yeah. The first one was a 3-hour conversation. We just got into everything, and it was fantastic because the canvas was blank. We had kind of a North Star. We both were feeding off what each other was saying, and we were both getting it, the time stream, ocean of time thing. Freddie, that was Freddie's idea, and that just was beautiful. I love that notion of you can see the big crest, but you can't see the small crest that lead up to it. And it gave us a way to deal with something like being able to be out of time and see the future, but not be able to kind of change it in the moment because you can't see the small instances that lead up, the small ripples that lead into the big waves. You can see the big waves, but you don't know how you get there, quite frankly. And so so a lot of it was trying to be coming up with a facet of his powers and how incredible they were. I'm like, well, okay, how can we handicap them? How can we kind of make it so it's incredible and godlike and all this stuff, but there's got to be some sort of limitation.
A limitation,
a limitation on it, just so it's something that we can make it dramatic and it can have a sense. Because if he's God, he's God, and that that's boring. I mean, who wants to read that?
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember what the climax of the first story arc, or maybe it was the first issue? I can't remember. Hold on. It was the climax of something that was supposed to happen. It was what you had written as far as in the outline, and then a real world event made you have to rewrite it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh.
It involved Captain Atom turning the baseline of a continent to steam to float a landmass. Do you remember this?
No, I don't at all.
You don't?
I don't remember this at all.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, it has to be you. I was like, wait a minute, am I thinking of the wrong? No, but your idea was that there was going to be a huge earthquake that was going to hit Japan, and
Right.
Captain Atom has to summon, like he breaks through a new power level. It's like as much power as he could, has ever exerted to raise Japan up on like basically vapor to allow the tectonic plates
Yeah.
underneath it to
Yeah.
go
Now I
nuts,
remember
and
it.
then
Yeah.
he let it back
Yeah.
down. And
And
then,
then
then there was the huge earthquake with a tsunami that took out the Fukushima
power
nuclear
plant.
plant. And
Yeah.
so, and it was like, I mean, that's terrible as far as a real world event. That was completely awful. But looking back, it would have, I mean, if we had been like a month earlier and had already put the book to bed, or a couple of months earlier and it had already come out, it would have seemed either prescient or insensitive. I don't know which way it would, or both, or something. You know what I mean? It was a great sort of story beat to hit for him to, to save tons and tons of people. He can't stop the earth from quaking, but he would just like lift that up to kind of let it calm down and then set it back down.
Set it back down, right? And I do remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is such a book that's grounded in kind of nuclear science, if you will. We're talking about atoms. We're talking about why does he have the abilities? Because his powers are a little different here than they've been before. His atoms are constantly splitting and reforming, and that's where his energy comes from. So I do wonder, maybe you had to do some research visually, Freddie, on how these things would look and how you would depict them. But for you, JT, did you have to kind of go back to school a little bit and do any research, or were you just like, I'm just going to wing it? It's comic book science. It doesn't really matter.
No, I did, and I was actually looking at the stuff again over the weekend as well, and like the whole thing about like the M theory and all that. That's all stuff that was real, and trying to think about like obviously like organic life, it's hydrogen and carbon and oxygen, but like there's other stuff, and I remember we refer to that like about the other weird elements and minerals or whatever that make up life and humanity, and like kind of trying to dig a little deeper in that stuff. So like with all the stuff with the collider and the the quantum physics, anything that sounds technical in there is really not something I make up, because I love researching and world building, and for me world building a lot of times comes from reality or comes from fact or research, and then if it's a fantasy thing I'll change it, but like I always try to start in a real place. And so for this one, all the science I try to do real, but the benefit is because he's a pilot, like it doesn't have to sound so sterile as it might if you had Dr. Manhattan himself like doing a real in the weeds kind of description of what he's doing.
Yeah. Because he doesn't know himself. It's like, Nathaniel isn't going to give a full-fledged, detailed explanation of anything because he doesn't understand it. He just finds himself in this position. So he doesn't know his limits. He doesn't know where he should or should not go or what his philosophy should be. I always, if people ask me about the design of him, of the Captain Atom that I was drawing, was like, he only has fingers because it's like you're used to seeing yourself with hands. But most people don't think much about their feet. That's why he doesn't have individual toes, even though he's technically nude or something, whatever it is that he is, or it's just an energy form. Or why when he was in that disruption field, he is like trying to focus, and to him, focus equals brain. And so visually, his brain gets like 800 times the size of what it previously was because he needs to focus so that the disruption field at the military base or whatever has kind of trapped him. For him to get out of that, it's like it's a visual representation of what his sort of self-image is, or something like that, which I mean, to me that's one of those products where JT and I are talking for 3 or 4 hours or something. And just on a side note, like the way that I felt like I was trying to be reciprocal to his generosity, of JT's generosity of letting me throw out ideas and taking on the responsibility of making some of those work, is that I would do my rough layouts for the whole issue and send them to JT to make sure that if he had suggestions or if I had misinterpreted some of what he had written in kind of the plot method, which is also called the Marvel method, that he would have a chance to say, I was hoping for this to be a bigger moment, or could we make these smaller moments, or just whatever, so that it's like a breaking down. We were breaking down boundaries on like the definitive line between like sort of writing and artist, and I wanted to reciprocate that as an option, back to JT. So anyway, yeah, I think I kind of lost the track of where I was going with that, except for to say it was a great interaction, very fun.
I remember even trying to talk to the editors to see if we could get the credits changed so you weren't just credited as the artist. So like as the
Oh,
creator, I wanted to adjust it because I was like, Freddie's really bringing a lot to the table, and this is really the most. I was telling the editors, I'm like, this is really a really really collaborative effort, and so I kind of wanted to kind of let it be, and so I almost like we wanted to be like storytellers, you and I, or something like that, where it was like we were, yeah, because
yeah,
that's
it's
kind of.
and thank that I do remember you doing that. That's very generous of you. I think that maybe they do credit it as storytellers because they said that there's actually technically like a legal difference between saying if you say storytellers, it's one thing. If you say like co-plotting, then there's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And
Corporate got
I don't.
involved.
What's that?
Corporate got involved, and we weren't able
Yeah,
to. It wasn't easy.
but to me, storytellers was still great to
Yeah.
because you did way more plot stuff than I did. So even that would have been a stretch. So I don't think I should have been listed as co-plotter or whatever. So
Yeah, I think
Fine.
hard to
storytellers.
define.
Yeah, storyteller, because really, it's almost like every comic should be, because it's visual storytelling and it's narrative storytelling, but it's still telling the story. Because the other thing that's happening, well, real quick, going back to the research thing that you were saying, JT, and different elements and what have you, but also dovetailing into what you were saying, Freddie, about he just didn't know that you illustrate that expertly in the scene where he heals Renita's hand, right? Dr. Megal is actually the one going, okay, then you got to make phosphorus, and then you got to make this, and you got to make that, and whatever, so he can actually heal her hand, because he doesn't know. So that really illustrates it really well. But in terms of talking about equal lifting on the storytelling here, because not only is it a different sort of ethereal style that you use, Freddie, when we're talking about moments like that, and that's a perfect example, that scene with Renita, the emotion in her face when she wakes up from this coma that she's in and she looks at her hand and it's healed, just expressive emotion the entire time, especially with this ethereal version of Captain Atom that you had, like so much, because he doesn't have the usual features. There's not the texture in the face, so it's a lot of the eyes, but he doesn't necessarily have eyebrows, but it's a lot of the eyes, the size, and what have you. Like, that's one of the things that strikes me when I go back and read it, is just how much emotion, whether it's somebody human like Renita or Captain Atom, who's beyond human at this point. There's so much emotion in the art, even though it is a little bit of a different style. Now, that's not something
Thank you.
JT, as a writer, you're putting in the script. This has to be really emotional, whatever. I mean, that's Freddie bringing his storytelling chops, right?
No, I would say big eyes, big eyes, big eyes, big eyes.
Bigger eyes, even bigger now.
Even bigger. He's happier than those eyes, Freddie. He's really happier than those. No.
Something just popped in my mind, and I don't know if this could be. Do you edit the podcast in a way that you could add any visuals to this later, or is it just as is? Okay, I'll send you the specific page. I'll email you the specific page I'm talking about. But so this is like an aside, or feel free to just edit this out completely. But there was a convention that we were at in Tillamook, which is in Portland. This was in 2018, I think, and this young kid walked by. And he was looking just around at stuff, and I have my portfolios that have original art for sale or some just for display and not for sale. And there was a Captain Atom page where the name of the general eludes me, but the general who who almost captured Captain Atom. It's like a page. It's almost a splash page where he's basically at the military base, and there's he's in 3 different panels, I believe, on this panel or on this page, and he's got these big sunglasses, and he's got all these ranks, all these medals and stuff on his chest. And this kid goes, as he's walking by, he stops and he does a double take, and he looks at the page. He's kind of looking up over the table at it, and he goes, "Is that Hitler?" And I said, "Who? What are you talking about?" And I looked over, and he's pointing at the general, and I said, "No," because he doesn't have the Hitler mustache. Hitler didn't wear a general's hat or sunglasses, at least to my knowledge. And I said, "No, that's he's a general. He's like a bad guy in the comic." And he goes, "Oh, okay, well," and then he points at the next panel with the same general, and he goes, "Is that Hitler?" And I said, "No, what are you seeing that's Hitler here?" And his dad, who was standing next to him, goes, "Come on, buddy, let's go." And then he takes his hand and just walks away from him. So I walks away with him, and I was thinking, is this kid just hung up on Hitler? It was so weird. He looks nothing like Hitler. I mean, it was It's one of my best memories.
Didn't you flip 8 pages to the actual portrait of Hitler that you had for sale? You didn't
all
do that
the Hitlers that I've drawn. Of all the Hitlers I've drawn, he picks out the one who's not Hitler.
That's not Hitler. This is Hitler.
This is a Hitler kid. You want to see one? No. Anyway, that's one of that's my favorite memory from that convention. Is that kid with total earnestness? It's like in his mind, Hitler had to be on this page. So he was just, is this Hitler then? No, it's not.
Hitler doesn't wear sunglasses
or a general's hat or anything. I don't know. Very bizarre.
Well, we were talking earlier about this being a little bit of a prescient series. Ealing is he is a good example of that. In terms of I don't know if we could say maybe call it neo-fascism, if you will, but the rise of it's more prevalent now than when you guys created this. So in that way, I almost dislike Ealing more now than I did at the time. Like he's so sort of tone deaf, right? And you can't help but we were talking earlier about being able to relate to Nathaniel. You can't help but relate to him on put yourself in his shoes when you think, God, if somebody wanted to use me for a weapon because I had these power, like this guy doesn't care about. I mean, at one point he even says, "I'll burn this whole nation down trying to protect it." I'm like, this guy is just. He doesn't see the forest for the trees. Yeah, he's somebody that you just...
Yeah, if it's burning out of control, then he failed to protect it. But if it's burning because he set it on fire, then it's within a plan that he orchestrated, thus he's successful somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so...
He would totally be the Thomas Jane in The Mist shooting everybody in the head because he doesn't want the creature to get to him, Yeah. But he would know that help was there. He would know that help was there.
Oh, yeah.
Still just go, I think this isn't going to work out, so clip.
Yeah, he looks out the rearview mirror and he actually sees the truck coming, but then he shoots him anyway.
I better hurry. It's got really dark fast.
Well, Midland. Maudlin. Sorry, Midland.
Maudlin. So, again, we have 13 issues. So it's 1 through 12, everybody, and then there's also a 0 issue. When it came down to getting toward the end of that second arc, like when did you know, okay, the book is not going to continue? Did it finish? I mean, as much as I'm sure you both would have liked to have done more, as a reader, I'd love to have read more because I think the journey that he was on, especially, talking about this sort of formation of detachment, if you will, for Dr. Manhattan. But when did you know it was going to end? And do you feel like, even though you would have liked to have told more, that you got it to the place where you were kind of happy with, what they allowed you to do?
If I remember correctly, and Freddie, if I'm wrong, let me know. The 0 issue was, we knew finishing up that last arc, the dream one, the dreams deferred storyline. We knew then that it was going to be, because that was like a 2-parter, and then we knew by then and before the 0 issue that was going to be the last issue we did.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, please.
No, you.
What I remember was we had, so in one of our brainstorming conversations, we had this idea that was similar to the future Captain Atom, the one with mirrored thumbs on both sides of his hands. The original idea, it's like he basically goes into the sun and he comes back in time. That idea if I remember, was going to be like at the end of issue 12 or something like that in our original idea of our breakdown for the next couple of arcs or something. And Rachel said, I really like that idea. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something like, you might not get that far, meaning we're not going to probably have another arc after 12. So you should probably do that now. Yeah. And that was, like the beginning of the second arc, if I'm not mistaken. And originally it was like a little bit of it was supposed to be like at the end of the universe, or my suggestion or whatever was like at the end of the universe, and there's like one final like supermassive black hole he's going to be like the last matter in the universe to be absorbed into this, and instead he's able to, I don't know exactly how, but he goes back in time, one of those things.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like there was a clear indication, not a certainty, but a pretty clear indication we were essentially on probation. We were on double secret probation at the end of like issue 6 or something like that, around there, 7 maybe, something like that.
Yeah, we kind of knew halfway through the Chronomoto story that that the writing was on the wall. The two things that bummed me out was the Zero issue we didn't find out about until way late. And so we had already done kind of his origin story.
Right.
And so when they said, "Oh, the Zero issue," we're like, "Well, we just did that in issue like 7. We had all this stuff, or I can't remember what issue number it was." And so we kind of tried to figure out a way. Well, how do we do his origin story without just repeating what we had already done? And so that was kind of a thing. The biggest disappointment was the original storyline was supposed to be that when he was in the future and he was dealing with Chronomoda and trying to stop all that, he stops it, and then the next issue picks up, and he's in a human form, and he's more traditional Captain Atom. Do you remember this? He was more traditional Captain Atom, and he was a member of the Justice League, and he was dating Renita. So we did like a time jump, and life was great. But then he starts noticing that there's little like glitches in the matrix, if you will, and he realizes that the entire existence is false. It's built by the future version of himself is like a prison for his mind, so he won't combat him and challenge his future self. And so we had this really cool idea that he would be attacked by, so everybody started turning into like Captain Atom versions. So we had like a Captain Atom Superman and a Captain Atom Wonder Woman, and they all become like versions of that. And there's like one panel that we got to use where it's like, oh, he's fighting, or he's the only one standing and all the Justice League are dead. And I think Gorilla Grodd's in the image or something like that. But that was all supposed to be, we're going to have like basically Captain Atom versions of the Justice League fighting Captain Atom. And that was going to be, I thought it would be such a cool visual.
Yeah, and I think, I remember, because this was when, in issue 2 or whatever, when we had the guest star of the Flash, not that we used him completely, he was just like a nice little accent or spice to the story. And then later when we were wanting to do this story that you're describing, I remember Rachel saying, well, we can't, basically you guys kind of got lucky that we let you use Flash in issue 2, because basically the mandate is we're not doing a lot of crossover guest star stuff, because we're trying to basically make the book stand on their own without overusing some of the bigwig characters, the A-list characters. And our argument was, but this wouldn't be real. I mean, it's not like we're saying this is the real Superman. Yeah, it's just images from the world that he's interacting with. And, and that's fine. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff like that in the behind the scenes where you basically have what you feel like is a good idea, but because of a bunch of factors, you end up not being able to do it. But yes, I do remember that. But I remember feeling like this is... Yeah.
So cool. I was like, and I remember that was the thing I think we fought the hardest for and didn't get. And I think especially because they knew the story was ending. And then when they knew the story, then I was like, well, then if it's ending, what do you care? Like, what's the big deal? I mean, just let us play with toys in the sandbox.
Just let us do it. Come on.
For 20 more pages and call it a day.
Yeah, but I mean, that's everything else that that we brought to them basically got approved and just about everything that I can think of. When we brought it up, they let us do it, even if it was, looking back, just pretty surprising that they would. So, yeah, that's probably the only thing we really fought for that didn't work out. But yeah, there was space, meaning page count limitations, and then knowing that the series would end pretty soon. There's this is something else I'll send you a link to if you want to use it. You could cut it in here. There's 2 videos. So there was. Because I felt like JT and I felt like we were doing something that I was very proud of, and with Captain Atom. And about halfway through the series, I usually don't pay attention to sales numbers, and I'm not sure how I saw the sales numbers, but they weren't very good, and it made me feel pretty depressed. So I did this video where I was basically brainstorming ideas, where what I wanted to do was I had like a bunch of I was trying to drive some sort of organic. What am I trying to say? Like marketing or interest online. So the idea would be, I'm going to, like the first 12 people or whatever that messaged me their address and didn't mind me sending them something, I was going to send them comp copies of like the first 4 issues or 6 issues or something like that of Captain Atom for free. And I'd pay for shipping, because I just want, as long as they agreed to do a review online of their honest thoughts, just to talk about this. Because what I was hoping is, if you haven't read it and you end up reading it and you like it, then that's great. And I felt like as long as they got it in their hands, they would recognize it as something interesting or good or fun, you know. And so I recorded this video, which I still have, so I'll send it to you.
Yes.
JT, do you remember the video where it was the dark video, the dark version of the video? You don't remember this? Oh, it's going to be great. All right.
No, I don't.
So
my brain is all jelly, apparently.
Well, it was a long time ago. But yeah, I sent you a link to a privated video on my YouTube channel that has never been shown before. So it'll be interesting if you cut some part of it here or use it all. It might be boring if you use it all, but I'm basically standing next to a big stack of comic book boxes, and it's like the room is dark and there's not very good lighting, and my mood is like real low, and I'm basically describing that I want to do this. I don't know if it's a contest or giveaway or whatever, but I started off by saying something like, you know, it's great, you know, what feedback is out there is really good, but with all of the excitement of the New 52, I think that Captain Atom has kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. And then I lay out all of these ideas, and I sent it to JT, the private video, and I said, what do you think about this? And you wrote back that it looked like I was depressed or something. And that's true. That's how I felt.
Hello, this is Freddie Williams, and for anyone who's keeping track of the New 52 sales figures, you'll know that Captain Atom, which is the book that I'm illustrating for DC Comics, is right at the very bottom of the sales charts. And the type of reviews that we get are really good. I'm thinking it's the lack of exposure that the book has. And to be honest, JT Krul, who's the writer, he and I have both put in a whole lot of work on this book, and I just want people to read it. So my goal is to give away the first 6 issues of Captain Atom to 10 people. I want people who don't already have the book, or if you maybe have issue 1, that's fine. But I'm wanting to send. I'll even pay for shipping.
The next day, I filmed a higher energy version of it that was actually in the room with daylight, and I had a smile on my face instead of feeling depressed. I'll send you links to both of these.
Hello all, this is Freddie Williams. I'm the artist on Captain Atom, which is one of the New 52 series that launched back in September, and I'm wanting to give away 60 copies of Captain Atom. What I'm wanting to do is send out the first 6 issues of Captain Atom to 10 different people. I'm hoping to reach new readers. If you've picked up the first issue, you know, which a lot of you have, that's totally cool. But first 10 people who either Facebook me or Twitter me or send me an email, I'll send you the first 6 issues for free. I'll even pay for shipping. What I'm hoping to accomplish with this is just getting the book out in front of more people. There's a lot of books with mainstream characters that get a lot of attention from the New 52, and rightfully so. I think they're very well done. But Captain Atom has always been kind of an oddball sort of character, kind of a hard sell from the start. You see, the reviews that we've had for Captain Atom have been very favorable, but I think with all of the amazing stuff that has come out in the New 52, that we've kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. I'm really proud of the work that JT Krul, the writer, that he and I have both put in on the book. It's one of the most collaborative efforts I've ever had at DC, and really I just want people to see this book. I'm going to send out the first 6 issues to the first 10 people that do the following. 1, have a Twitter account and a Facebook account. 2, be willing to read all 6 issues of Captain Atom within a pretty short period of time, I don't know, a week or so. 3, write a fair, honest review of what you feel about the series, even if you dislike it, that's fine. But I hope you do like it. 4, post that review on your Facebook or a blog, tweet and post the link to that review, send it to me and I'll share it as well. It's the story that you would get in the first trade paperback, although the trade paperback's going to have a bunch of extra stuff in it anyway. What I'm hoping to accomplish with this is just getting the book.
And I don't really, everybody who I sent it to did leave like a review online. I really don't think it made a difference, but it was an attempt. I just wanted people to see it. And even if it wasn't for them, I would have been fine with that too, with that type of review being out there. But I felt like, you know, there was like the top 10 New 52 books, and we were like number 58. You know what I mean? It's like we were not quite the lowest, but we were pretty low down. But I mean, I'm very proud of what we did on the book. And it's one of, you know, very fulfilling. I just really want, yeah, it'd be nice if it had mainstream success too. That would have been pretty sweet. But they let us have 13 issues. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I sort of feel like DC doesn't know what to do. I mean, look at the things they've done to Captain. He's trying to turn him into a villain like all the time. Even now, I'm good friends with Tom King. He's super talented or whatever. But even in his Jenny Sparks book that so far we've had one issue, the villain's Captain Adam. Like I don't. He's such an interesting character, but it's almost like he's so generic. He's a little bit of a mishmash of all these other traditional, more well-known DC heroes. So what do you do with him? The fact that you guys came up with something that was unique, it looked different than he'd ever looked before, but he looked cool. His powers you could understand, and there were those limitations that you built in. I mean, one of the limitations that we haven't even mentioned is the fact that when he would get like super powered up, he would start losing cohesion, and there was always the threat that if he lost the cohesion in actually on different parts of his body, but if it was his brain, then he wouldn't have his consciousness to will himself back together. Like so many unique things that you guys did. But again, to your point, JT, about it being a double-edged sword, maybe you didn't have as much oversight as you would have had it come out kind of on its own. But the other part of it, yeah, everything was new for New 52, and so, yeah, it just didn't get the attention it deserved. It's so kind of frustrating in a way, I guess. Not to be too maudlin about it.
I mean, I think all our careers are filled with books like that. Books that projects we like that they last for a time and they burn a little bit, and then they kind of have their moment and then they pass. So you kind of get used to it. So it's not like, I mean, like Freddie said, I'm glad we were able to do it. I think it still stands as one of my favorite comic experiences in this business, to this day. And I think that's a testament to Freddie and our working relationship, but also what we managed to come up with together, and I'm very proud of it. I like it when anybody talks to me. Like Jace, anytime you came up to me and said, we got to talk about Captain Adam, I'm like, absolutely, I'll totally anytime. So it's we got to do some fun stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, it really stands up everybody. So it's available in trade. You can go and pick it up. You can probably track down the single issues. I'm sure they're not very expensive. But I highly recommend it. It really does. Again, it stands the test of time. It's so unique, and there hasn't been a lot of Captain Adam since then. Since the New 52 started. What was it? 2011. He hasn't shown up much. I mean, and when he does, he's kind of in the background, and he looks like his old traditional way. Although we never got an explanation why he went back and doesn't look like he looked here.
Jace, who would want to follow us? Who would want to have to follow me and Freddie? I mean, how are they going to do that?
Yeah,
really? I mean, exactly. What are they going? Who wants to step into those shoes? I wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. DC doesn't know what to do with them, and the story you guys were telling would be a tough act to follow. It really would.
I think because shortly after Captain Adam ended, then there was the Dr. Manhattan miniseries, and I think it had much better sales figures. I didn't look it up or anything like that. But I think that type of character is just kind of a tough nut to crack as far as having an interesting idea, story-wise, art that vibes well with that, and then also happens to hit the zeitgeist in a way that picks up and kind of becomes successful or whatever. It's a difficult type of character to sort of get the right recipe, because the recipe involves ingredients that we can't control. It's how it hits, the not just social media, but just when you're in a comic book shop, like are the comic book shop owners recommending this book, or are they recommending another Batman series that's
Batwing.
Right. And those are great, and people should read what they want to read. If it's a Bat Family thing, it makes it much easier to recommend it, and it usually, ties into whatever the big event book is or something like that.
Yeah,
so
Captain Adam hadn't had his own series in like almost 2 decades or more, and it's like, how does a store owner know what to order for a Captain Adam #1? Batwing #1 they can figure out. Action Comics #1 they can figure out.
But that's the thing about this series, though. Maybe you don't know Captain Adam. Guess what? You don't need to know who he is, everybody. Freddie and JT are giving you everything you need to know. And like I was saying earlier, I think, if anything, the story that you two told and everything you crafted, from Ealing to the kind of the inherent questions Captain Adam is asking himself, am I still human? Can I have relationships? It's only more relevant now in the context of, what questions we ask ourselves in society with all the divisiveness. over the last decade. So I think the story that you guys told is even better now as it relates to kind of, social questions and kind of the social situation that we find ourselves in. It's sort of more relatable to the human condition right now in this time period, I think, than it even was back then.
I think part of it might even be because you think about coming out of COVID and like this sense, like he's a guy who wants desperately to connect with people, and that's what people are having a struggle with now, is to have a real connection with somebody. And where technology is kind of becoming our barrier to having real connections with people, as much as Zoom and the internet and everything brings us closer together in a way, it also moves us further apart. And to have true connections with somebody it's getting harder and harder. You see it with the younger generation coming up. Like they have their interpersonal skills are not as developed because this is how they communicate through devices. And so in a way, Captain Adam was doing the same thing. Like he had this incredible power, but at his disposal, at his fingertips, but it also created a wall between him and the rest of the world.
Yeah, godlike power, and he would give it all the way just to be human. One of the other lines that always stuck with me when he talks, when he allows himself, gives a little of himself to be human and spend some time with Rita, and he talks about just the fact of being able to touch her, because I can still feel when I'm Captain Adam. I feel the pressure, but it's not real connection. It's not real feeling.
He says it's something like it's resistance.
Yeah.
It was the resistance of the atoms, not like the actual touch of the person or something like that.
Contact. Powerful moment. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's been great talking about Captain Adam. Again, I recommend it. My highest recommendation, everybody, go and check it out. It's absolutely amazing. Don't need to read anything before. It stands on its own, the 0 issue and 1 through 12. So as we're winding down here, why don't you guys, anything you have coming up that you can tease that's been announced or about to be announced, and where people can find you on social media. We'll start with you, Freddie.
So my socials are usually is at Freddie Art, FREDDIE Art, and so I'm on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, Facebook. I think I'm just Freddie Williams, FreddieArt.com. But conventions, I'll be at Granite Con late September. In October, I'll be doing New York Con in Memphis. Then in November, I'll be doing the Honolulu Aloha Con, and San Francisco Fan Expo the same week as Thanksgiving. So those are the shows I'll be doing very shortly, and back to back where I'll be a zombie at each one of those. So come by and get your comic signed by a zombie. And then project wise, at the end of this month, so later in September, Turtles of Grayskull, which is the He-Man Ninja Turtles crossover that I've been working on. Issue 1 comes out for that, and trying to think of what else. Just about Naruto Ninja Turtle covers, some other stuff like that. A whole bunch of covers I'm doing.
Look at them just throwing out casually. Oh yeah, I'm just doing this little thing called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's Grayskull. Just this little thing.
Yeah, Turtles and He-Man.
Right.
I'm very lucky to get to draw that stuff, by the way. But it's
10-year-old Freddie's going, Turtles and He-Man.
I'm 47 and I still do that. So 47-year-old. Going nuts.
Freddie gets paid in action figures sometimes because that's what he wants. That's a currency.
Just a big truck of action figures. Yeah.
Man at arms.
JT?
I'm off of a lot of social media. I'm on Instagram. It's at Krul Words. My last name Krul Words. That's where you'll pretty much find me. As far as projects go, I've been writing with Aspen Comics for years, and we actually have a brand new Kickstarter that's launching in the mid-September. Ecos Volume 1. So it's a brand new full graphic novel introducing this character Grell that Michael Turner and Jeff Johns created back when Mike was still around and was still alive. And so we kind of took that as an inspiration, and we're launching an entire new universe with Grell and touching upon some of the other Aspen universes like Soulfire and Fathom.
Awesome.
So it's very exciting. It's a great time. But yeah, that's the main thing I've been working on lately.
Yeah, and hopefully we're going to have you back on at some point during the campaign to talk about it, everybody.
That would be great.
Stay tuned. You may be seeing a little bit more of JT really, really soon. So, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a blast, and thank you for this. To me, what is the seminal defining run for Captain Adam? I have the entire run of the 86 series. It was mostly written by Cary Bates. He's always been a favorite superhero and a favorite character for me, but your run is my favorite. I think it really stands the test of time. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
That's
thanks
really
for
nice.
having us, man. This was a lot of fun. This was great.
Definitely. We got a little behind the scenes that was great to hear as well. So we hope you enjoyed it out there in the audience. Thank you for joining us as always, whether you're listening on the audio only feed or on YouTube. We appreciate the support as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.